Second.
All right, motion by Ms. Garrettson, second by Ms. Lopez Caneva. Roll call.
Hayes,
Yes.
Garrettson,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Lopez Caniva,
Yes.
Shaw.
Yes. All right, regular session reconvened at 7:05 PM. All right, can we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we are going to start this meeting with recognitions and board salutes.
All right, I can start. I just want to give a board salute to our custodian and summer workers, and I know they've been busy, all the summer, just cutting the grass, landscaping, cleaning our classrooms, everything, just getting all those projects done. But I thank our custodians and summer workers for that.
I would say in addition to that, I'd like to recognize Mr. Amer for the work that he's been doing. He has done a great job as far as reading his report to the board, or reading his report that he put out there for the board. He's on par with his predecessor, so good job.
I'd like to shout out to Dr. Bride and Stephanie Croy for taking the time to meet with each one of us to review the board, the budget, and answer our questions and review methodology and take time to walk through the process. And I found it very helpful, and spending the time, that's a lot of time out of your day, and I appreciate all the board members taking the time to come out and carve that too, so they have a better understanding of the process and how it all works. So thank you very much. I know putting a budget together is a lot of hard work.
Great.
I guess I would just add the same, that it's an all-year job, running a school, preparing the school, being on the school board, so I appreciate everybody still working even though it's hot and it's July.
And going to get hotter this week. So.
And we'll get this into this later. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Luann.
I like to shout out to Kathy. She has been checking in on me and making sure I got what I needed to participate in the board meeting. So thank you, Kathy.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And we'll get into this later at the president's report. I'd like to thank all the board members who have attended our feeder school meetings. It's an additional work for you guys, but I think it's going to pay off in dividends when we get around to it. So thank you. Okay. All right. We don't have any student board member reports, no AFT report. IASB governing board report. Ms. Johnson, do we have anything?
The only thing, but it's a little ways off, is, of course, we got III coming. If those, hopefully all the board members sign up with Kathy for that. And then in October 23rd, we have the division meeting. For the new board members, we're in the Three Rivers division. Each division typically have a division meeting. And this one is easy to get to because it's at Prairie Bluff Golf Course. Like I said, it's October 23rd at 5:30. So if you considering it, put that on your calendar and let Kathy know about it. So there is a fee. I don't know what the topic is, though. Go ahead. That's all I got.
And you all did receive that email from, I think it was Lori Grant that sent it. She recently, in the past couple of days, it has all of the information in there about the Three Rivers meeting. So it's our general area and the representation from different school boards, and they pick a topic every year. And like when I went a few years ago, they had a panel of administrators that were talking about things going on in their district. So. And Luann, when do they normally send out the resolutions that we vote on at III?
I think they're out. Kathy, you got the books, right?
Yeah, the resolutions, I believe the resolutions are out. We had the booklets, I think we had the booklets in some of your materials, but we'll
Yeah.
double check. But the resolutions, I know the resolutions are out, so they're probably in our office for sure.
So, and Ms. Johnson, would you mind explaining just exactly what, because you are our delegate that attends that, the purpose of us going to Triple I and voicing our vote there and how valuable that is?
It's the way each individual school board can state their opinion. Good example is several years ago, a hot topic was teachers having guns in school. And so there was a lot of controversy around that. So the various school districts from around the state, actually this is a state issue. It's not just Northern Illinois. They got to voice their opinion and to vote on whether they have guns in the classroom, and it got voted down. That's one example. Then it came back again in a different way of having, I think, safety officers. I think that's what they call them. Is that what they call them, Dr. Mary Brown?
School
Safety
resource officer?
Yeah, school resource officers. Because the school districts in Southern Illinois, they don't have the luxury of having as many police available to them in case there's an incident. So there was some talk about them getting those officers to be in the school. So there's various opinions. That's a way of those resolutions. Once they voted, they go to the state school board, who represent us on the state level. So I think that's the way to flow. Right? Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, so when we receive those, if you could read through those, what we do is we provide a yes or a no on each one, and we would give that to Ms. Johnson, and then she would cast our vote on our behalf based off of what the majority decides. No foundation.
And typically, Dr. McBride will explain the resolution to you as to which ones that may or may not impact us. A lot
Right.
of resolutions do not impact us. So.
Right, closer to, for example, we'll have our board meeting this year, I think it's November 17th, the Monday before Triple I, and usually what I do is I walk you through, what would my recommendations be on those resolutions, in terms of voting, just so you're familiar with them. We can do it in October too.
Maybe October, Dr. McBride, so that way
Mm-hmm.
the new board members can think about it. So, just a thought.
All right, there is no foundation board report. Our legislative report.
Yeah, legislative report, just, wow, what did I just do? Just to make the board aware, this is still being, there's been a lot of press, there's been a lot of conversation, but the state legislature is in recess, so no action going on there, but a lot of action on the federal level, so a few things that are going on. The federal government has frozen about $6 billion that the U.S. Department of Education would typically allocate to the states. Most of these are in what are called title grants. That title grants are grants that Congress had authorized as a program or an allocation. Title I, for example, is to help impoverished students with reading and math. So that money is currently frozen, and about $240 million of that is designated for Illinois. These funds, you'll see later in the budget, count for about 2% of our budget. Today, there was some news that some of that $1.4 billion was freed in what's called Title IV, a different title grant. We don't get Title IV-B monies, our district. It's not clear what that means. It's not clear if that money will be released. These are the type of things, one thing in budget season, that we can't predict, right? And one reason why you have fund balances, right? So that if we don't receive 2% of our budget that is from the federal government, you know, the board would have to have a conversation. We would have to have a conversation of how do you do continuity of services without passing that on to the taxpayer, which I don't think our property taxpayers are paying what they're supposed to be paying, right? Legally required to do. We certainly always hope the state will do that with evidence-based funding. We always hope the federal government will step up and things that are authorized by Congress. So, you know, planning for that, as we talked about in our budget workshop. So there's not really a clear indication of what is going to happen there. These are primarily funds that go to students in poverty, students with disabilities, students who are learning a new language. By 2032, 1 in 4 of our students will be English language learners in the United States. So these are all funds that go. These are funds that go to our friends over here, who are very interested in the trades, in construction, career, technical education. All of that is federal funding to support that. So that's all frozen right now. The additional concern is the way it was paved a week ago this week with a Supreme Court decision that the President of the United States cannot dissolve a department that the Supreme Court cannot dissolve a department that was authorized by Congress, different branches, checks and balances, but can dismiss those employees. So most of the employees of the U.S. Department of Education are going to be dismissed. And those are the people that manage student loans, they manage our funds. So it's unclear, you know, how that's going to happen. So we just all have our eyes on it. We're trying to sort out what it means. What is it ultimately going to mean in terms of title money? What I always hope is, I always hope our property taxpayers pay what they're legally required. The state pays what it's legally required. The federal government pays what it's legally required to do. Everybody does their part for public education. And then if there are disputes between entities, we have a court system to sort that out, right? You know, if states and the federal government are at odds, we have a court system. But in the meantime, we have students to serve. And so we hope we see a break in this. So,
Dr. McBride,
yeah.
did I misunderstand that the federal government is shifting some of that educational stuff over to Department of Human Services?
Yeah, that is true. Some of these executive orders have been, all of these executive orders that impact education have a proviso in them that within 90 days, either the U.S. Department of Education or the Office of Health and Human Services have to come up with guidance. Now, these are the guidelines for actually how, you know, procedures will be carried out. Interesting enough, none of the agencies have met their deadline at this point. That's why it's a little mysterious to us. But you are absolutely right, Luann, that some of the responsibilities of the U.S. Department of Education are being shifted to Health and Human Services. But the guidelines have not come out yet from either agency.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're in limbo. That's kind of where we're at. That is legislation right now.
Public comment follow-up. There was no public comments at our last meeting. Next, public comments. We have none. Communications.
We have one. And it's from PMA. They sent a card to Stephanie Croy, and it says, Stephanie, thank you very much for the opportunity to work with the district on its last bond issue. We appreciate the trust and confidence placed in our services and the longer-term relationship. Please pass our thanks to the board and Dr. McBride, Bob, Michelle, and Jen. So it was working with them for selling the bonds.
Freedom of information requests. There are 3 of them. You can read through those in board docs. Any questions?
Just a comment, the one individual, Sherry Reed, it looks like she reaches out often to various entities, various school districts and other associations.
Yeah, it's very, very typical. Just, you know, data acquisition specialist, that's a business request, oftentimes requesting information, either in order to solicit, advertise, or understand pricing, to be competitive. So it's one way that there's a commercial use of FOIA. So.
All right, up next, we have the approval of the June 16th, 2025 Board of Education meeting open session minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from June 16th, 2025?
So moved.
All right, it was motion by Ann Lopez Caneva,
Second.
second by Ms. Hayes. Roll call.
Harrison,
Yes.
Lopez,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yeah.
Shaw.
Yes. All right, up next, do I have a motion to approve the July 2025 board member expenses?
I'll make that motion.
All right, it's motion by Ms. Lopez Caneva. I'll second it.
Oh, okay.
Any questions? Roll call.
Johnson,
Yes.
Harrison,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
Lopez Caniva,
Yes.
Shaw.
Yes. All right. All right, treasurer's report.
And the part of Stephanie Croy is being played by Bob McBride tonight because Stephanie Croy is on a much deserved vacation. Busy week last week in the, always busy, the business department never rests, but payroll last week, school fees, it was fast and furious on Wednesday when they were due, and then also tentative budget, right? And this is what I would say to all board members, and we'll be coming back to this. I was talking to Ms. Lopez Caneva in her budget briefing. This is a very, very important treasurer's report. It might be the most important of the year because what it represents is any treasurer's report represents the closing of books last month. When we close books on June 30th, we close books for the entire fiscal year. So what you're really looking at is a total year cycle of how your budget and your cash flow worked. You're also looking at the performance of last year's budget. And I only have a few things to point out, just for board members. Financial reports, all of our customary financial reports, and you'll see this, I'm gonna kind of blow this up a little bit. You will see all these financial reports, and as you know, we always list assets first, and then we list liabilities second, general accounting, right? You're gonna see this reflected in your 5-year forecast. But one of the things I think is the most important, I'm just gonna go down to this lower right-hand corner here, is your closing assets. That is a significant number. That is what your total fund balance is. And just to remind the board, when we look at that number, roughly about 40% of that is encumbered in investments, and 55 to 60% is actually a liquid cash. That number is roughly about $4 million higher than we projected. So when we projected where we would be with our fund balances, it's significantly better. And it's really worthwhile to point out why and to point out how this, I think, helps taxpayers and helps the board. The why behind it is one, if we go on the Wayback Machine, a year ago, the board on your May 20th resolution, you had 3 prongs to it: addressing essential maintenance plan, some non-life safety work at Central, and commissioning a East Campus facilities master plan. And then, and those two both implied using fund balances and then a strategy to recoup fund balances, to kind of be growing back to health as we draw down fund balances growing back. So we took that to mean, more conservative than usual spending patterns. So when we went into this year, we were very, very, very conservative in our spending. So our budget outperformed itself. The second thing is we always have to, in this budget, we have to make an anticipation of how much we will collect in taxes. We're generally very conservative. You know that we collect taxes twice. So you would think 50% in May, 50% in September. We look at trends. We do a conservative projection. Last year, we projected 42% collection. We actually had 51% collection. I think primarily because more and more people now just absolutely have their taxes paid out of escrow. Banks have to pay those real estate taxes. Then also a final thing, which I always say, this is the most important thing, and this isn't to look at other political organizations, but the single biggest lever in property tax is the value of your home. Everything is levered off of that. And both Homer Township and Lockport Township made across the board an unanticipated for us 10% increase on every piece of property, increase in value. That lever, pushes, even though our tax rate is, again, the budget that you're gonna see is, it's gonna be lower, our tax rate. It's been in decline for quite some time. It's one of the lowest out of 17 high school districts in the Chicagoland area. We're number 16. We're way at the bottom in terms of our tax rate. But that tax rate, if your property rate, every single public body, it's going to be levered up. We didn't anticipate that there would be 10%. So those are three levers that really led to larger than we thought fund balances.
Dr. McBride,
Yeah.
excuse me. You're talking about the property tax rate. That's driven by is it the tax assessor? Who decides that?
No, our tax rate is driven by our budget.
No. I'm sorry. The property tax rate.
Do you mean the property
Like the
value?
value of my,
The property value land?
yeah.
That's decided by the Homer Township and Lockport Township assessor. So that's the piece, the
Oh.
largest piece of a property tax bill we have no control over, which is assessing, the value of your property. That's a lever 10%, that if your total assessed value, your taxable value of your home goes up by 10%, no matter what public bodies do, your taxes are going up.
Okay.
No matter what.
That's
If
all I
every-
want to say. Who makes that decision? That's the township.
The township assessors decide that.
Township assessor.
So that's
Okay.
completely out of our hands. And I'm sure our two township assessors, they've got formulas, they could do a presentation to their boards about why they both recommended a 10% increase, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's the single biggest cause for any increase in property taxes. And it just, we don't have any control of that.
Yeah. And we're fed by Lockport Township and Homer, right?
Yeah, yes, ma'am. And both had a 10% increase in their assessed values. That was
Okay.
much larger than we anticipated. So conservative spending, higher tax collection, 51% of our taxes were collected, and then also a much higher increase in value of property than we anticipated as well. But what I would say to the board is you have a number of things coming your way that you've really had a strategy of using fund balances to offset new responsibilities for property tax owners, right? You've already committed to debt service. So you've said new debts will not cost our taxpayers. We're not doing a debt service levy. That's a separate levy that we do. And we basically say, hey, if we have debt, taxpayers are paying for that debt payment. You've taken that offline. You've used fund balances. If you do another debt service abatement, you'll have about $5 million that you've used fund balances to pay for. Last summer, you spent $5 million in fund balances to pay for work at Central. You're also thinking of things like science classrooms, CCC, Lockport Academy. That's about another $10 to $12 million at Central. You're planning on fund balances. So you're now up to about $20 million in fund balances that you're planning. And then you're going to get a East Campus Facility Master Plan that will have a lot of zeros by it. So I think the good news is you're very well positioned here at the end of the year to use fund balances to continue debt service abatement, to do maintenance that will, and renovation that will not be new burdens, new responsibilities for taxpayers. So that's one of the positives of fund balances. Another positive is that positive fund balance assisted you when you did a bond issue to get a lower tax rate. We'll talk about that a little bit in my superintendent report. You had 7 banks who bid on you. And, Bonds, when you sell debt, it's just like construction, right? We can say it costs this much to do construction. But then Mr. Offerman and his other colleagues in the construction business will come along and we'll get bids and they'll actually tell us what they'll do it for. That's the real cost. When banks come and bid on our bonds and put in competitive interest rates, it's good if you have 7 different bidders because it drives down that interest rate, you know, for us, for taxpayers, ultimately. And that is because we had such a good credit rating. So that is, I don't know if there's cash flow questions or any of these reports, statement of position, but this is a really valuable document that we'll be coming back to, especially on August 18th, when we have the whole board here, all members, just to say, how did we do last year, right? This really tells the tale. And, you know, no deficit spending, balanced budget. We outperformed our budget goals, which I really credit our department chairs, our teachers, our business office of just being stingy spenders. The other thing I just want to point out is the one thing I really ask board members to pay the most attention to, which is your 5-year financial forecast. This was your initial forecast. We anticipate about $89 million where we would end. The biggest spike is the influx of $15 million. You'll spend about 6 of that this summer, 9 the next summer, we anticipate. And this is really, you know, where we're seeing things track. If you continue debt service abatement, if you expend cash at Central, this is where we think these will, that's about that 20 million that I was telling you, 93 million to 72 million. This kind of just projects out all funds if you use fund balances, where you'll end up by 2030. You know, you'll be at this high in 2025, but what you've been planning is this downward slope in order to relieve property tax owners. Any questions about this treasurer's report?
So I have just a quick question. So
Yeah.
we're projecting at 2030 to have $72 million. And I see on the statement of position from June 30th of 2025, the fund balance is, sorry, 78 million. And it says that is 11 months of operating funds.
Right.
So at 72 million, you would still be over 8 months of operating funds, right?
Right. The board's goal has been between 6 and 12 months.
Right, I know that
So
that's a
we
board goal.
try
but
to
I'm
keep
just-
that in
yeah.
that range,
Yeah.
right?
So,
So this is not really tied to anything in your current reports. This is just really Stephanie and I putting in the model
for sure.
all those things I mentioned, you know, Central last summer, $10 to $12 million in non-life safety work projects at Central, continued debt service abatement. All of that's about $20 million, you know, thus the decline that you're seeing. That's what it would look like. What's not included here are, we do have some assumptions in here about labor agreements. Just make some assumptions because you've got some labor agreements you'll negotiate. We don't have in here anything related to East Campus, right? So your drawdown is about $20 million in fund balances projected as a concept, right, of where you're going. So this is, you know, kind of what we've actually seen. And as you know, here I just kind of pointed out on the statement of position where, you know, we exceeded this by about 4 million in performance. So.
Now, another question, I'm sorry, Dr.
Yeah.
McBride, is the 8th belt schedule, the expenses on that.
That is
That
in this projection.
All right, so it's already in there too, okay.
And interesting enough, just to be really clear, Ms. Lopez-Caneva's question is moving, you know, we'll get very serious in August. We really need to, if we're going to have a new bell schedule here at East Campus, we need to approve that by October. That would be starting fall of 2026. The costs of that would be reflected in the next year's budget. So we do have assumptions here that the board would take on a new, my estimate's about $1 million to $1.2 million increase. But what's interesting, I forgot to mention this, one of the other reasons why we see us 93 million as opposed to 89 is we continue to do a really good job. Your single biggest expense is personnel. So every time we gain ground, and we're in a period of retirements where we gain ground and we have a less costly employee that's hired, we're outperforming. You know, we've kept our hiring over the past 6 years below 3% increase. So we are way ahead in terms of hiring costs and expenses related to hiring. Hiring costs are really sliding down and becoming less and less of our budget, just in total dollars. Any other questions about the treasurer's report? I just thought those were some important highlights.
More of just an item in the bills payable. I saw some payments for the project over at Central.
Mm-hmm.
So just wanted to, and maybe Neil will talk about that a little bit later, but it seems as the process is going well. People are processing the paperwork, completing projects on time, getting inspected so that they go and get their invoices paid in a timely manner.
Right. So those invoices as contractors, subcontractors wrap up, you know, Mr. Offerman is already starting, you know, when tickets close out and there are bills, you know, we're in the position, we're using that $15 million in that life safety bond to close those out. We still will have, for the bulk of the work, the biggest expense will come in August and September, you know, wrapping that phase of the project up. But we're moving along. When contractors finish up, Mr. Berglund is our construction manager, certifies that they've hit their punch list. He actually, you know, we talk about this in our construction meetings. He authorizes payment. He sends it really procedure-wise to Mr. Ammer first. He authorizes it, Mr. Ammer reviews it, and the business office pays.
Thanks.
Okay, any other questions about the treasurer's report?
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the June 2025 treasurer's report?
So moved.
I can second that.
Okay, motion by Candace Garrettson, second by Ann Lopez Caneva. Roll call.
Hayes,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Garrettson,
Yes.
Lopez Caniva,
Yes.
Shaw.
Yes. All right, board president report. So a couple of things that aren't in the agenda. First off, again, thank you for all visiting our feeder districts. Candace, you were the most recent visit. Anything to report out? You went to Richland?
Yeah, between now and the last board meeting, I went to two. I went to Fairmont and then I went to Richland. They were both very, just mostly over, very receptive, very friendly, very nice. Happy that we were making this overture, and it was kind of short and sweet, but it was nice. They acknowledged it was nice to have a connection above and beyond the superintendent connection.
Thank you. So just so everybody knows my next steps, I will be working with Dr. McBride to come up with some dates so that we can get some folks together. And then I will be emailing all of the board presidents, seeing when they would like to meet, and then if they might want to bring a second board member with them, because we have to keep it under 3. So that's kind of where we're at with that right now. Next, I know, Anne, we've had a collective conversation about possibly attending various events in the district. July was not much going on, which is always nice for a break. August is really when it ramps up, and there's a lot of really good opportunities to stop by the school, meet the staff, see the students in action, and I would highly recommend every board member stops in the school to see what a school day is actually like. Any highlights, Dr. McBride, that you would want to have?
Sure. What I would highlight for board members, you know, just things coming up, I really appreciate, you know, Ms. Lopez Caniva and Ms. Garrettson are going to represent us at the Lockport Legends Thursday night, as is Dr. Greenan. Dr. Huntington and I have a really rare opportunity to go to Yale University, the original Center for Social Emotional Leadership. So we just felt we had to take advantage of that opportunity through district management group. I always recommend that very first Institute Day is important. We have an 8 a.m. breakfast. It's a nice time, you know, just for board members to meet and greet, to be seen. We do go to the auditorium. We do sort of a kickoff. We're kind of shaping that. Dr. Greenan, I think, kind of when I'm thinking about a keynote, there's some things that I'll be doing, but I'm really thinking about Dr. Greenan giving some feedback to the staff after his first year as the personnel director. Just some thoughts. We have some data that he's collected to look at who we are, what we surveyed, what people are saying about being a professional here in our district. I think that morning, that's a real highlight. That's Thursday, August
14.
Thank you, August 14th. I also think I'm going to try to get all of the board members on Thursday, August 12th at 8:15 a.m. to get on the school bus because we take our new teachers on a school bus tour of our district. And I think there's just a number of things. Number one never knows what the temperature will be, so you will find out what it is like for our children to be on a school bus, right? That's super important. Number two, I just think our district is so diverse. Many of you are longtime residents, but I think when I did a tour with Mrs. Garrettson, she was surprised. She was surprised at corners and parts of our district that she had not visited before. And then the third thing is meeting our new staff. You've approved them, connecting with them, learning more about who they are, getting excited about them. It just makes a large institution small and helps our staff understand who you are and the work that you do. So that's Tuesday, August 12th, 8:15 a.m. My advice, dress lightly. And have fun. It's fun, But those would be the highlights. First day of school is a great day. That's August 18th. I know it could be a long day because you have a board meeting that night, but I'd love to host you and walk the halls and talk to teachers and see what's happening. How does a school wake up? And sometimes that can just be you and me, 20 minutes walking the hallway, a couple of us. We can find a good insertion point at whatever time of day there's an interesting thing to see. So those are the highlights I would really stress.
And then next, Dr. McBride and I had a Zoom call with Lori Grant. And in your board docs, you will see the agenda for self-evaluation for our board retreat. Please take a look at that. Let me know if you have any questions about what we're going to be doing on that day. We have our current board protocols in there. We will probably be reviewing these to see if we need to adjust any of them based on the election and the new board, because new boards make changes. And then she has an article in here. It's called From the Field, and she really talks about the pillars of trust. I know a few of us got to see David Horsager. I can never say
Horsager, you're there. Yeah.
All right. And he wrote the book Trust Edge, and a few of us read it a few years ago, presented on it. But really just talking about, what a board needs in order to have trust in each other, in order to move forward and make the decisions we need to make in order to benefit our students. So if you could read that before the board retreat, it's only, I think, 4 pages long, not even a full 4 pages. So that would be fantastic.
And I think it's in our board packet too.
It is in your board packet as well.
Right.
Yes.
We also made paper copies just,
Mhm.
we have a packet for Luann, Mrs. Strite, and Mrs. O'Halloran as well.
Can you mail it to me, Kathy?
Oh, sure.
Okay, thank you. And it's still August the 7th, right?
Yes, from 1 to 4.
Okay. I told Kathy I may be a few minutes late, but I'll be there.
Thanks, Luann.
Okay.
All right, our superintendent update.
All right. There's a lot here, so I want to kind of get to it, and I also want to honor our students everywhere are doing some other thing. Just very quickly, I was neglectful. Rising Star IASB event on Wednesday. Our own Candace Garrettson has been invited to speak. So, if we were in the classroom, I'd be putting little stars on your paper, Mrs. Garrettson. So thanks for representing us. Have a great time with your presentation on Wednesday. Just a couple things. I want to get these guys up relatively quick, but I do want to stop at something that I think we can't stress the difficulty of this enough. And I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole of assessment. This month, next month, and in September, leading up to October, I'd like to tease some of the achievement of your students, just so you can frame up, and I want to align that achievement to the goals that you've set. So that when we get to that huge annual report, we're kind of checking in and going the right direction. My plan is advanced placement scores this month, grade performance next month, and then the final month, how have students done on dual credit exams? But I think this is fairly significant, and anyone in the school business, this would make their eyes pop out. So in 2021, we had a variety of different conversations coming out of the pandemic, and what we were asking ourselves is, what does this board, what pinpoints of achievement do you want us to really stress? And what came out in 2021 was the College and Career Readiness Index, the CCRI. And this board put a huge emphasis on the CCRI. We actually presented at III our work on the CCRI, because what we know is that standardized test scores are declining in sort of relevance on your school report card. Other factors are increasing, like advanced placement and dual credit. So if you look at 2021, if you just look at total students in the program, 578, now you go up to 2025, you have almost 800 more students involved in 2025. Typically, when you begin to recruit students who don't usually take advanced placement tests, and I do want to make a difference, I don't want to go too far on this, but criterion reference tests versus norm reference tests. This is a criterion reference test, and in simple layperson's terms, I taught a class, and the questions that my students received on an exam are directly related to what I taught. I taught U.S. History AP, Reconstruction. There are questions on Reconstruction. Our students do very well. Like if you look at the Illinois Science Assessment, another criterion reference test, they're right up there with any district around, right? As opposed to, we had a conversation about norm reference tests, like the SAT or the ACT. Those are college entrance exams. They are every year designed that there's a high and there's a low. They have no use to colleges unless there's a bell curve. Their degree of difficulty is going, and they're generalizable skills. They're not specific skills to a course you taught. They're generalizable skills, general reading skills, general math skills, not anchored in what you taught. So generally, when you increase by almost 1,000 learners participation in these high-level, very difficult, and these tests are the same tests that are the people who make the SAT. You generally see a decline in performance, right? More people are coming in, learners who don't usually take advanced placement. You generally see your pass rate go down. That's okay, right? But you have more people with the rigor. But what our teachers have accomplished is a 10% increase in performance. And I really just can't stress how huge that is. That's a giant academic gain. So you set a goal in 2021, increased advanced placement. The performance increased. It didn't decrease, it increased. You can see it in a graphical representation here. So you should be very proud of students. You should be extremely proud of teachers and school counselors who got behind this and said, we're going to put you in the most difficult classes that you can be in, right? And we've done that kind of across the board because you have to prep up for that. So you should be very proud of it. This is a very tough result to get, very, very difficult to get a 10% increase with 1,000-person almost influx. And well, that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much. There it is. Yeah. Mrs. Garrettson, and then maybe Mr. Amer and company, why don't you guys come on up and you can share, we'll transition to the second part of my presentation. Yeah.
I just want to say just a
Oh, come on up. Yeah,
quick
come on
word.
up.
Well, the really, I think the supports and the programs that you and staff put behind this effort, really just the results are right here, and I think it's just great. And I know you've got a lot of student participation that are helping other students along the way, and I think I just think all that is just a really a great effort that to reach towards this goal. So I was really excited to see.
And you know, really credit Dr. Krista Farrow. She's kind of at the helm of that, building principals, our equity leadership team through EOS, assistant principals, department chairs, school counselors, teachers, you know, everybody was involved. And really where this came from is when Jerome McKibben came and did the demographic projection for you, and he said to you, you are not going to get more students or less students, you are going to get different students. Mm-hmm. And so you made a decision, are we investing in advanced placement, dual credit? Are we investing in SAT scores? And you made a decision to invest in advanced placement scores, especially because you knew you wanted a vessel for diverse learners and still have rigor. So those 800 plus students that are new are really all diverse learners from all of our districts, high representation from all of our feeder districts, and giving them really a year in a college-like class, right? Yeah, Dr. Shaw.
I think I had two things. All right. Also, I was just gonna kudos to Kelly Featherling and Don Murphy for the AP Advocates program throughout this process. And just, the investment we're making in our students right now when it comes to, the different things that we're doing, we're saving families a lot of money on the back end when it comes to the college credit that they're receiving on this. So I see you nodding your head.
Quick question, so I'm assuming if they take a test, are they taking this test one time? Is it
It's a
taken?
one-time
It's
test,
one
right?
time.
Yeah, it's in May. It's the first 2 weeks of May, Tammy.
Okay.
Kind of a thing. If you ever, I recommend board members come to that. It's a thing to behold because some of these courses are so big. We're using whole gyms. It's online now, which is also an interesting feature as well. The College Board used to say we're never going to put SAT and the advanced placement test online. It's online, so it's one shot. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, I want to pivot. I'm going to have this august group. If you guys could share mics and don't worry about picking it up and pulling it close to you. Want to give you some updates. We've been really working hard. Candace Garrettson been to a construction meeting. We had about almost a 3-hour construction meeting last week. Back, we had workers on Saturday. We're probably going to be going, back at it, on Saturdays at Central, folks there, really digging into some things that we want to share with you. We've got more work, more we're going to learn tomorrow from our chief architect, Eric Sickbert, and from Pease Borst, structural engineers. We're at that point in a project that you might, recognize if you've ever done a do-it-yourself. You look at your bathroom, or you look at that drywall, or you look at whatever you want to tear out, and you start doing the said tear out. And you begin to discover things that you didn't quite know that you just got yourself into. Just like last summer, you might remember, about to depart from Japan, and we got ourselves into stuff that we didn't know was there. And we're kind of at that point right now too. And there's just a lot of work. We start getting a little sweaty about how many days we have left till we open. We start looking at things and asking, we have all these workers here now. Should we really dig in and repair that? So we have a couple areas that some unanticipated adventures that we've found in a couple different places I put in your board update. But I'm going to ask, these are also kudos to Berglund. We asked Berglund as they came on to begin the tradition of having 2 paid summer interns. And so could everybody introduce themselves, and who are you and what's your role? And let's just get into, I'm going to let you, Mr. Ammer, what's, after we do introductions, what are we wrestling with at Central? So who are you, sir?
So I'm Brian Ammer. I'm the Director of Facilities Management, new Director of Facilities Management. Do you want me to wait till?
Yeah, let's get everybody. Who are you, sir?
I am Liam Zimmerman. I'm an intern with Berglund.
And you are leaving Lockport to go where?
I'm going to Milwaukee School of Engineering, where I'm going to study architectural engineering as well as civil.
Okay, and who are you?
I am Jocelyn Casey, an intern with Berglund, and I'm going into my senior year here at Lockport.
You're going to be right back at Lockport Township High School, Jocelyn. And we all know.
And Neil Offerman, Senior Project Manager, running the work for the summer.
And I was going to ask these guys to talk a little bit about some things we've encountered at Central. And, Jocelyn and Liam can jump right in there. They've been there all summer, but then also you might want to pick their brains about what their experience has been. The other part of advanced placement is putting students to work before they go off to whatever is next. And they're, the kind of evidence of that hard work to get lots of internships for our students. Brian, you want to kind of update us where we're at, what's going on?
Yeah, our summer contract work, the things that were actually in the drawings, is going very well. No concerns there. Neil and I talk daily, go to our weekly OAC meeting. We're constantly on the phone, kind of checking in on the status of everything. Neil's been a great partner throughout that process. Well, we're kind of, we found an opportunity for improvement in, how we're framing some of the ceilings. And so we've been working on that over the last couple weeks. We've had it inspected by a structural engineer, kind of have a good plan coming forward for 2 of the classrooms. We're going to inspect the other 2 classrooms tomorrow to see if we're good or if we need to pivot and make a change on how it's framed. So that's kind of where we're at. What we know today on the work that we have scheduled, we feel really good about getting that work done. I'm not, I'm hedging a little bit because I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. But that's kind of some of the struggles that we've been dealing with at Central. But the contract work is looking really well. Neil,
And just to interject, Neil and Jocelyn, you might want to put, you can, add in. We're still kind of looking at that 1928 section of the building where we have some mysterious, some of the roof has some framing that's load bearing on the exterior walls. And so we want to make sure that any pushing out on those exterior walls, do we need to remediate that? We think we have a good plan. We've seen that in a few classrooms. Has that been going on for a while and that's just settle? So we're sort of combing all the way through that. Obviously, we want to make sure that with everything open, that we feel comfortable, we feel good about that. Got a couple other areas to bring up, but let you guys jump in about your perspective and what you're thinking.
I was going to add to Brian. I mean, right now the base contractor work is going exactly how we wanted it to go. Like I said, I think in the last board meeting, I think we're doing really well, and if anything, we're maybe a little ahead of the game. We have added a little bit of the scope of work in terms of some of our inspections, kind of similar to last summer. As we uncover things, we find a little more work, things we want to remediate as we're there. It makes sense. It's obviously for the most economical way to spend your money. So we are working Saturdays and Sundays, going up to August, I think 17th right now. So we are again kind of at that push where we are making sure that we have the adequate time and manpower to get this job done, to get the students in time. So. Again, feel really good. Got an inspection tomorrow, so we'll continue that process and make sure anything that gets uncovered, we'll discuss it as a team.
Jocelyn, Liam, anything you want to, anything on this that you've seen? You've been in a construction meeting, you want to report out to the board?
It's a great question. So as these, I don't want to say issues, but problems come up and people come in, it's been an interesting experience to interact with the engineers and a lot of the workers. Networking, it's always a good knowledge and skill to have, and I feel like it is something that has helped me, especially with Bruce, one of the structural engineers that
From
came out.
Peace Boris, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Jocelyn, things that you've been doing, impressions, your experience?
Yeah, I'm not so much on the engineering side as Liam is, more of a hands-on person. But speaking with the engineers, seeing the framing, seeing the building opened up is definitely a very cool experience. Talking with the foreman, soaking up as much as we can about what goes into this work has been very valuable to me over the summer.
Great. And if board members have questions for these two, a couple other areas, we're looking on the third floor at these classrooms, I think 309, 307, looking at opening up a couple others. I think I had an opportunity to explain to Ann Keneva, we do have a question about the Veterans Foyer that we're also kind of having a conversation about. We had to remove some of the original plaster, very heavy, molded plaster, decorative tile, which exposed a lot of water supply running over the Veterans Foyer. If you can ever imagine our worst nightmare, if that water supply leaked, all that plaster, coming down, there really hasn't been access to that water supply. So how do we create access? Do we keep all of those tiles, those original vintage tiles? I meant to bring one to you tonight and I failed to do so you could see what I'm talking about. Do we create a section where there's a little bit more access? Is this a good time to put a ceiling like what's above you in and replace those vintage tiles, right? So that's all kind of rolling around. Maybe that's a project for next summer. Maybe we just put it back up. We have access, and but that's an iconic room, right? So those are the kind of things that we're thinking of, and that's original material that was put there, right? So. Do you have questions for Liam and Jocelyn and for these guys, just where we're at, how things are going? Like I said, tomorrow we'll hear more from our structural engineers and from Eric Sickbert. The one financial consideration that we're all aware of, I think, thanks for your emails today, Mr. Offerman. Anytime, if we go over 10%, we have contingency funds for unexpected work, but if we do go 10% over the total cost of the project, you do have to vote on it to authorize it. But at least I think we're pretty comfortable tonight from a money standpoint that we didn't bring that vote to you tonight. You might recall last year, we brought that vote to you. We did the estimating, we did the thinking, and we said this is gonna be 10% over, and you'll have to vote on authorizing us to do that. But we think we'll, be under the contingency amount that you've already set aside. Questions for these guys?
I just have one question, and I don't know, maybe Dr. McBride, maybe you can answer it, or maybe Neil can. As far as the final inspection, will the Will County Regional Superintendent, would she have to sign off on this?
Yeah, we have to reopen the building.
Yes.
Brian, you wanna talk about that?
Yeah, in my past experience, the ROE, Regional Office of Education, always comes in and signs the final permit. There are AHDR, Authority Having Jurisdiction. So you get a permit from them, they would come out and close out that permit.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that inspection has been scheduled already. That's done by the architects.
Okay,
So yes,
so it'll be before school starts?
yes.
Okay, all right, that's all. Thank you.
We're sort of, and we're like, it's not over till it's over, right? We're all
know.
like, yes, school will open on, last summer, everywhere I went, Public Landing, Mock and Mule, people, oh, is it gonna open on time? We're fairly optimistic, but, we wanna get all the way through, and, like Mr. Offerman said, we have people working now 7 days a week, so.
I know I only live about a block away from there, and I can hear the guys working outside just from my house, so yes. Yes, and I see all the scaffolding and everything going on, but yes.
Any questions for these guys, the students, their experience?
So I have a question, not that, I don't know if the students can answer it, or I don't know who would answer it, or even if you have an answer for this, but, of course, when I got the email, the word that jumps out at me, of course, is change order, which a lot of the residents had mentioned that multiple times. With a building this old, you're gonna have all these change orders. Do you think the change orders are in line with, like the amount that we're having, or do you think it's above or below, or, because of course, change orders, like you said, then they come with the cost, and then we gotta worry about if we're gonna be too far over budget and we have to adjust.
Go ahead, yeah.
Anybody?
So the main thing that I want to point out is that while we're working on these spaces, and while we have our scaffolding up and our shoring up, you're kind of getting the best bang for your buck if there is a change order, because the areas that we would find any issues with, we already have it shored up and ready to go. So obviously the change orders are more money because it's more scope, but this is the best time to do it, considering the fact that we're already there on site with the shoring and scaffolding in place.
No, I understand that, but,
Oh, okay.
like, as this has been discussed, what is really the district's 10-year, 20-year plan? So yes, when you're looking kind of shorter term, yes, that makes complete sense, do it now because it's open.
Yeah.
But if, 15 years down the road, we're actually not gonna be keeping that building, then it does bring up the question, we're spending money on it, that just make a note that change order was something I'd heard again and again and again, so, and here it is.
Yeah, and
And I
think,
see it.
well, every construction project you'll ever do will have,
Well,
you know
especially
that,
with-
Tammy. And one litmus test that I think is useful is in the budgeting for the project, we set about $500,000 aside for change orders. So we really look at the pace of that. We think we'll underperform that. That's one good way to sort of assess, oh, hey, where we're at. What I always come back, what I advise to board members is what your community said to you in 2 surveys. They said 4 things and they said it twice. Number 1, they want you to improve your existing facilities, and they've said it in 7 referendums. Number 2, they don't want a new impact on taxes, debt service abatement, use of fund balance. Number 3, they want it to be transparent, and number 4, please communicate it, right? Those I just kind of keep coming back to what those 2 facility surveys have said that people are looking for. So one additional thing I just wanted to bring up, and certainly hang for a second, but I don't always do this, but I do have some social media activity. It's in your folder. It's facing. I just kind of wanted to walk you through some posts we talked about. We don't know if Paul Balazs is in a group of individuals or as a person, a him or her. But I really I want to maybe cut through some posts that appeared. Number 1, I am always really happy when it's a litmus test of our transparency. It's a good thing when we put things online, like your treasurer's report, and then we actually see those real numbers in something that someone posts. So it's a good sort of, we sent something out, it was received, right? And it always heartens me because that way people in the community can access everything that you're doing, right? It's that transparent. So that makes me very, very, very happy. There's just a couple of things, if I just walked you very quickly through this, that you know are a concern to me, right? Number one, just the idea of debt. I think almost everyone who's an adult in this room has used debt artfully, right? You've done it so that you don't drain your cash reserves, and you've said, I will go out and get a home equity loan or a mortgage, and I will pay this off over time. So everyone is very familiar with the benefits of that, and the drawback of that is paying interest rates, right? There's a couple things in these two posts that I just think have to be cleared up. Number one, board members saw a very detailed email I sent to Mr. or Mrs. Balaj that 5% is not the interest rate that you're being charged. That's documented, it's 4.52%, and it's the result of a competitive bidding process. In this post, there's several times people say, oh, that's an astronomically high interest rate. I would just ask people to look at the going rates right now, right? It's far lower than if any of us go out for a home equity loan or we go out for a mortgage. Those are going at 7 or 8%. It's well below that, and that's the benefit of having positive fund balances. So with all due respect to this post, I think the community needs to know that that is not the rate. Also throughout these posts is a reference that the taxpayers will pay for this. Well, certainly every dollar we spend is paid with taxpayer dollars, but through debt service abatement, there is no additional burden on the taxpayer. You know, you're looking maybe at the third year, you know, I will see your vote in December, of not having a debt service levy that is you know, assigned to taxpayers that they would have to make up. So throughout this, we hear that there's a taxpayer burden, and there's just isn't. This debt has not created any taxpayer burden. And then the final thing I would say is in these posts, there's a kind of a constant reference to no use of fund balances. And you know, I kind of tabulated up in your year-end report and your projection that you're going to be about $20 million into fund balances with an East Campus facility master plan coming your way too. So I just think it's important, you know, when these things are kind of out there in the public, and what we always hope is that you know, people, if they're going down this route, that they're accurate. You know, the interest rate is not 5%. Mr. and Mrs. Balaj has been told that. You voted on a debt service abatement. The Will County assessor can verify that. There hasn't been a debt service levy since 2022, I believe, if I get those dates correctly. And you have use of fund balances that's already well beyond, you know, what's being said here. So I just think that's important, you know, relative to directly to your question, Tammy, about longevity of Central. And you're in a tough position because your community has not authorized you to build a new building in the firmest tones possible. You know, they can't say that more. It's the most expensive thing you could do. And so I think you're doing a very astute job of limiting, you know, taxpayer impact through, you know, financing that's pretty tried and true, really. So that's Central.
I have a
Yeah.
quick question. So the, when I was at the construction meeting a couple of weeks ago, there was talk about some projects that were coming in under budget, right? Some components of it, if I understood that correctly?
Oh, are you talking about so as your construction manager, as I built up the bid packages for bid,
Right.
we have allowances for certain things to
Right.
be able to, almost like contingencies, right? Things that we think are going to happen, the probability of it's going to happen is high, so we put them in their contracts. There are some funds that right now are under budget.
Okay, great. And then I saw in a different report photos. And so I thought the photos were really helpful to kind of see, to show us all what was happening and where, and really what the monstrosity of all that construction looks like. So did our students take those pictures?
No, I think originals.
Those are Brian Armour originals.
Oh,
Right.
darn, I thought for 4 you guys were.
Trying to, provide the, we're spending money, and then you can see that there's a lot of work happening
Yeah.
At Central. So, you see the scaffolding, it's not just, piece of scaffolding here, it's the building. So we're scaffolding a lot, we're doing a lot of work. And I was hoping that those pictures kind of captured that. So
They did. Mhm.
Great.
So while he might have taken those photos, we do a lot of documentation, and it's super useful for like in the future when you have to reference back on what
Mhm.
was happening, or for example, might like you open up a ceiling, it's like, oh, what did that look like further on? So it's useful and important.
We were in a meeting. I don't really recognize Jocelyn and Liam without a iPad in their hands. Right? You actually have two hands. It's miraculous because every time I've seen you. But we were actually in a meeting. We were talking about something with the roof, and Liam said, "Oh, well, I have a picture of that right here. I took one. I just said, oh, this looks important. Like I should take a picture." So it was extremely helpful in the owner, architect, construction manager meeting. So well played, sir. All right, thanks.
I'll say one thing.
Oh, yeah, please do.
Liam and Jocelyn, that obviously they've come to work with a high quality work ethic. I've been hungry to learn what we've been doing out at Central, not only last summer but this summer. And part of those photos that we make them do, we make them talk to the foreman every day, ask them what they're doing, how many people are on site, and it's the best way for them to understand what work is going on site at all times, as well as kind of a learning opportunity to understand how construction process actually works from start to finish. And they've been very eager to go out there and talk to them every day. And I've noticed that when they come in, they're talking about who's doing what, and they're kind of trying to understand. And when they don't, they can ask me. And then, of course, I think you guys have met John Sandula on our site, who's our superintendent, who's running the work. I call him the nuts and bolts because he's the one that obviously is a carpenter, union guy. But they bounce off a lot of ideas from him. And it's just nice to see that these two obviously are putting their heart in the internship. I appreciate the hard work they're doing. And if they're any indication of your students here, I think you guys have a really qualified school and I want to say fan base, but student base.
Let's go, yeah. And kudos to Berglund. They just haven't been on the site. They've had very specific duties, real duties. They were in the office. They got a sense on the front end of where does this all come from? How does this place work? What are the divisions at Berglund? So they have a total understanding. So really glad to partner with you guys. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Last part of my report, so exciting, cell phones and cell phone policy. So I have more than time will permit me, but here's the gist. I've spoken to a few of you, and for board members, if you have time, I sent out an email about board member questions that kind of centered this. To make a long story boring, Kathy and I, Kathy assisted me, we went on a journey. Press, thanks guys. Press does not have a standalone policy. So that was curious to us. We thought they would have a model policy. One benefit of model policy is a model policy already has all the legal cross-references, all of the footnotes assembled. So we thought, well, surely somebody out there has. We called districts after districts. There isn't. Everyone, press, everyone that we talked to brought us back to existing policies that we have. So what I did was I sent you 7:190. And that's student behavior. And if you look in student behavior, and this is linked ultimately to our student handbook, and you look under number 5, I went back to 7:90 and could not think of really what more to say. Using or possessing, this is the list of things that are restricted. Using or possessing an electronic paging device, a cellular phone, a video recording device, a personal digital assistant, or any electronic device in a manner that disrupts the educational environment or violates the rights of others, including using the device to take photographs in locker rooms, bathrooms, cheat, otherwise violate student conduct rules. It kind of goes on. And what I picked up last month is that's the essence of it, right? That, that is already prohibited behavior. And so I couldn't make a recommendation to you that you need a new policy. If you did need a new policy, we would have to develop the legal footnotes. We'd have to make sure that we're in accordance with legal references, the law. this is already vetted and already kind of speaks to what we expect. I think what you're talking about, and we're, the administration, superintendent's advisory council, union are kind of, we believe there really just needs to be a concerted effort. We just really need to say to everybody, can we just keep these things away from us, right? Can we just, and why is that? And the reason why I'm recommending that you do a position statement as opposed to a policy is, in a position statement, you don't have all that legal architecture, but you get to express things that you can't express in a policy, like your beliefs. We believe in our teachers. We believe in the hard work that they're doing. We believe that disruptions undermine that hard work. Those kind of belief statements you can't say in a policy. We believe that parents and administrators and students and teachers are all connected in this. We have expectations of everyone, right? Those are things that you can kind of say in a position statement. A position statement is something you can really blast out at the beginning of the year to say, can we get this started right? Where we're kind of in a space and place, every class, where we're just kind of focused on ourselves, right? So that we can really, and I think what a position statement for the board would do is, it would be kind of a rallying cry to say, can we all get on the same page? Students are used to following rules. They don't always follow rules. If you've ever raised a teenager, they don't always do what you say, even though you told them to. That's called a policy in your house. They don't always follow the policy, right? And you got to come back and come back and come back, again, right? It's a recursive process. I did want to share with you something in our Dean's Handbook. This is our deans actually map out their strategy for every infraction. And so the deans already do, in their handbook, have kind of a progression, right? And I think really amplifying this progression, helping people understand the progression. I sent you how many discipline infractions and things like that last year, and how many different, but first events, they get a verbal warning, it's logged into Infinite Campus. There's a student conference, there's a parent notification. We have an ed puzzle that actually educates kids. This is an online thing that educates kids on why you don't want to be distracted in the classroom. Second offense, you get assigned a detention. Student conference, parent notification. Third offense, double detention. Student conference, parent notification. Fourth offense, double detention, and you can see student conference, parent notification, 30-day social suspension, and then we're going to kind of keep going, right? There were 8 students last year that made it all the way. Made it all the way to the end, all the way to the 5th offense, and all of these. It's a recursive process, right? There are steps, but when you get into it, and what your deans are doing on behalf of total campus safety and security, right? They're handling. You can see many other different offenses of various degrees, right? But I think it just takes a lot of people to do a simple thing. Can we just put those cell phones away? Mm-hmm. And, I've just generally found that it comes from repetition. So let me just pause there, get your feedback. We probably, to prepare properly for the beginning of the year, if it's a policy direction that you firmly believe, we kind of need that direction. If you want Jeanette Castillo and I to craft a rationale, a clarion call, a position statement, that's what I would recommend, because you already have the policy, you already have the procedures. Mm-hmm. But, want to just find out what you're thinking.
Yeah, and just to speak on behalf of Ms. O'Halloran, who's not here tonight, she and I did have a lengthy phone call about this. And I think this is exactly what she is looking for. And not having seen the Dean's Handbook before, I think, position statement, as you said, a rallying cry. Let's all get on the same page. Let's go against this, not against this, but let's support our students in this way, to make sure that they're not having these distractions in class, because obviously the classroom time is the most valuable time that they have during the school day, to gain the knowledge that they're getting while they're here, and then making sure that we are supporting the dean staff in being able to hand out the discipline as needed, and making sure that we're doing something to correct behavior. And we had the conversation earlier, no matter how many times you tell a student, sometimes they're still going to do it. That's just who they are. So.
Yeah, sometimes it's and also in the, I know Dr. Shaw, this well, and I would invite anybody, to really settle into a dean's office, because there are single offenses that can cost a whole day. Mm-hmm. They're that serious. I would expect that everyone on campus would want that single offense of that nature,
Mhm.
you know, really to take up that kind of time. They can be that complex. So deans can be, you know, hey, I'm on this, I'm closing out referrals. There can be things that walk into a modern dean's office that can sabotage an entire day, sometimes for just that dean, sometimes for the entire dean staff, right? You know, that's the reality. And one of the things I would caution everybody, in a very nice conversation with Mr. Ammer about his past district, is not to go into a reemphasis of this with rose-colored glasses. A lot of us are hooked, and it's not just the kids. You know, Candace was honest. Has she texted Aiden during the school day? She has. Have I texted Sophie Danny McBride in the school day? Guilty as charged, right? Convenience for me, right? We have staff that sometimes we go into the cafeteria. They're on their cell phones when they should be supervising, right? I go to meetings, and occasionally, it's very rare, that people are not listening to the really interesting material that I have, and they're on their cell phone, right? You know, so it's if we think it's hard out there for society to get people off there, it's going to be hard in here, right? And one of the things I wouldn't want anybody trapped in is just well, we have a progression that'll take care of all of it. Classroom management, I have found, is just it's work, right? So we have to be ready to do that work, and I think you're going to be better off as a board of saying we have a system of beliefs. It's not about, it could be about food, it could be about cell phones, it could be about canoodling with your significant other in the back of the classroom, right? You know, but you know, ultimately we want you to be focused in the classroom. That's ultimately what we want.
So to provide some direction to Dr. McBride, does anybody have any additional commentary on what he stated is the position statement, the route we'd like to go? And then follow up with, you know, getting everybody on board?
So I guess I would have a comment or a question. So we already have a policy, like the district already has a policy. So if they're not adhering to the policy now, what makes us think that just a rally cry is going to really get us under?
Yeah, I think that's a
under
great,
control?
you know, I think it's a great question, Tammy. I think some of the things that we found last year is we found that there wasn't a consistency from classroom to classroom, right?
Good, yeah.
And we worked with our union to recognize that, right? We hope that you can solve a lot of things, but you'll create other things by just having the porta pockets. Last year, they were optional for people. This year, we're going to require it.
Okay.
That you've got the little, you know, you drop your cell phone off, everybody gets their cell phone over there. That can lead to other problems, other unintended problems that we'll probably see as well, right? We haven't turned to our parents and said, help us with this issue, right? So really highlighting that and spotlighting that, we just think the time is now for more consistency, more spotlighting of the issue, more of an appeal to everybody, just to be more present and more available. And it's good for mental health too, so.
Yeah, for sure. Because my other statement would be that, you know, just because other districts don't have it, it doesn't mean that we can't do that. You know, that, I mean, if we want to believe that this school day is this important, then we should definitely make that known to everyone. The school day is this important. I mean, I think that everybody has texted their child during the day thinking that they'll answer it later. Not that you're going to get a response in 10 seconds, but
Right.
they do that.
Right.
However, you know, as we sit here and we say that schooling and education is so important, I do think that we should take a firm hand. Maybe we don't need an exact policy, but I mean, for sure, definitely some kind of rally cry where there is consistency. And I don't know, that mean that teachers who aren't being consistent are being reprimanded? I don't know, because I don't work in the system, but it is. There's a lot to consider, especially as the AI grows every minute of the day, that we should be definitely concerned about it, so.
Well, I agree with the position statement. You know, you and I chatted for a bit about this, and why a position versus a policy gives the school board and the administration and its teachers the ability to be adaptable as you because it's not going to be a line in the sand and then it's done. It's going to be an evolutionary process that everybody has to relearn, new skills or skills that we've had that we've now put to the side as we have these cell phones in our pockets. But I think hearing the student representatives at meetings over and over again, if not a policy, which I completely understand, and that we've got plenty of policy already, but I think to show that the board and the district and the is in support of everything that we've heard from the students. I mean, they're the ones that have really bubbled it up to our attention, and I think with our board position statement, I think that gives you the opportunity to formulate processes and procedures to help support the policies we've already got and help the the staff to go ahead and do what they need to do in order to get those that compliance and get the focus back on the students. So I completely agree with the position statement.
And we could have something drafted pretty quick, we would obviously do it outside of the, get your review of what we write outside so that we could start publishing it when we start sending all of our stuff out, right?
Sure.
Okay, great. That is my report. The only thing is everybody needs a second lanyard. Thank you very much to our PR people. This is a cool thing we'll be handing out to everybody at the beginning of the year. It just has all of our emergency safety vocabulary. If you hear someone get on the PA and it says, hold or secure or lockdown, just a simple, easy reference. What does that mean? Right? So that's my superintendent report.
Okay. Up next, I have the curriculum report.
And with your permission, I think the rest, most of these reports, a lot of what we did with Mr. Ammer and his report, if, maybe just if we take questions, just in terms, we want to kind of update you on a number of things that are happening. If board members have any questions about this report. Thank you, Dr. Christopher and Dr. Huntington. Two really important summer programs, ESY and English Language Learner Summer Program. Oop. Credit Recovery and Advancement also in there.
The ESY, that's a relatively new program, isn't it?
It is actually very old.
Is
It's,
it?
yeah, it's
Okay.
a continuation of services. Really, every school has it for students with disabilities, so that they don't have a break in services over the summer.
Okay.
No principal report.
No overnight field trips.
No overnight field trips, and you already commented much of what we've already discussed was in Mr. Ammer's report when he was up here. I don't know if there's any questions you might have for. We've all really enjoyed the bathroom project at the district office. It's been fun. Any questions with those for? Okay. Maybe go to, if it's okay with you, Dr. Shaw, the consent agenda.
Okay, sorry.
No worries.
We're conferring. All right, so next we have our consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda items 2 through 14?
Yeah, I forgot mine. Before we make a vote on those consent agenda items, I make a motion to pull out consent agenda item number 5 and number 9 for separate vote.
Okay, so we will remove consent agenda items 5 and 9 to vote on individually. Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, it was motion by Ann Lopez Caneva and then second by Tammy Hayes. Okay, so that being said, do I have a motion to approve consent agenda items 1 through 4, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14?
So moved.
All right, motion by Candace Garrettson. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, so it was motion by Candace Garrettson, second by Tammy Hayes. Roll call.
Johnson?
Yes.
Lopez Caniva?
Yes.
Hayes?
Yes.
Garrison? Yes. Shaw?
Yes. Okay, do I have a motion now to approve consent agenda item 5? I'll make that motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Candace Garrettson. Roll call.
Yes.
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 Abstain?
Yes. Do I have a motion to approve consent agenda item number 9?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Tammy Hayes. Second?
Second.
Second by Candace Garrettson. Roll call.
Yes.
Abstain?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Up next, action on the dismissal of an employee.
I'll make that motion.
Sorry, I have to turn my page. Okay, so it's been motioned by Ann Lopez Caneva,
Second.
second by Candace Garrettson. Any questions? Roll call.
Yes.
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 Yes. Okay, do I have a motion to approve the tentative budget for fiscal year 25-26?
So moved.
I could second that.
Questions?
And Dr. Shaw, if I could, just for Stephanie Croy, just very quickly on this to kind of framing this up for the board. When you approve the tentative budget, you're really doing two things. Your vote is, one, you're accepting it, you received it. And if you look, what we did is we printed the whole tentative budget out for you. And it's it's kind of in a binder form like this, just so you can see the entire thing. Having paper form, sometimes that's very helpful. All the different funds, all the line items. We'll get that to other board members as well. So one, you're saying, we accept it. Thanks, we received it. And then the second thing you're doing is you're doing your due diligence. You have to put this on display for 30 days to the public before you vote on it. So you're agreeing to put this on display. Very quickly, just two graphics I put at the kind of the beginning of your of that budget, just to help you understand. The budget really is a declaration of expenditures, and it's really projected expenditures, right? We haven't spent this money, but we are anticipating that we're spending this money. And as you think about the budget, one thing on the expenditures that I do just want to point out is much of what's on those expenditures has already been approved by the board. I think Tammy mentioned this in her salute. We started the budget process in January. So for example, salaries and employee benefits, you have already concluded collective bargaining agreements with our union. Those employees that are not represented by that union, you've already voted for their compensation that started July 1. So really, salaries, employee benefits is locked in, right? We'll start that journey again in January. Tuition, debt payments, student activity expenses, to a certain extent, they're flexible in terms of like where we're sending students to programs, right? But many of that, especially tuition, which really is one of the largest, those are really already students have enrolled in places like Wilco, beauty school. Already we have concluded IEP meetings with families where we can't provide the services they need here, and they're going to be outplaced. Your capital outlay is really related to all the work, most of it, that 11% is the work you're doing at Central. And then also other major capital outlay that you're doing, here at East, or we're doing a big resurfacing project right now over at transportation. So you really kind of, what's in play, you might ask, is actually purchase services and supplies and materials. Those are the kind of things that we really try to manage as we go throughout a year. So just kind of want to point that out in the budget. And then, obviously this slide is your revenue, right? This is a really nice slide to always illustrate that this budget straddles 2 tax years, 2024, 2025, 2024, receivable that we have. That's that estimate that I talked about earlier of what we estimate in terms of tax payments. And then other sources. So let me just pause there and on this tentative budget, if there's questions that we can dive into. Working with Dr. Shaw, we said that August 18th we're really going to clear the decks to make a much longer conversation about the budget so that all of our members are.
So as board members sit down and do their light reading with this budget, any questions that come up, make sure, either if they're a larger question where something needs to be prepared, obviously get those to Bob, so that he and Stephanie can sit down and take a look at those. If you want to sit down with anybody, I'm sure they're more than willing to open up the doors.
Yeah, it's and sometimes just sitting face to face is the best way really because our entries, for example, one of the things I've seen with board members is when you look at some entries, they might be completely mysterious to you. Park paraprofessional Title IV. That sounds like some kind of foreign language. This is confined to a certain extent that could you imagine this document if every single line item had its verbal description? It'd be impossible. So sometimes when you look at the line item level, it can be like, why so much health insurance, right? Well, every job we have to account for what we'll spend on benefits, right? We have a lot of jobs, right? So sometimes really sitting down with that and kind of walking through it. Also working with board members, the funds, education, operations, like what are the different capital outlay, in these different funds?
So tonight, our job is to approve the tentative, have a robust discussion at our next meeting. What is the deadline that the state gives us in order to approve our budget?
September. Yeah, your September board meeting, you have to approve it. Really by the end of September, you have to file it.
Yeah, so take all the time you need to digest this material, ask the questions, because then this is tied to the levy.
Yeah, ultimately it's tied to the levy. Like, for example, one thing we have in here is we did put in this budget an assumption that you're going to do a debt service abatement. So we have to declare that as an expenditure, even though fund balances are the revenue source. So all of these expenditures ignore, if you go to the expenditure side, they declare the expenditure, whether it's federal funding, E-rate, local property taxes, bonds. We just declare this as an expense, and the funding is separate, from that.
Yeah, and it might be, I don't know if it might be worthwhile to have Stephanie talk a little bit about how this ties to the levy and the fact that like we're creating this budget and the levy's how we fund it. So
Right.
they work hand in hand.
And the most important thing that'll be in play with the levy is the limiter that, the Consumer Price Index, property tax extension limitation law was set at 2.91. So we can't have a levy that is larger than 2.91% over last year. So there's a limit there. There's a bumper already put there. That's really the rate of inflation.
And what was the levy last year? What was the percentage?
Oh, goodness. I think we were right under. I think we were about, I want to say, I'd have to look that up, Tammy. For some reason, the number that's coming to me is, and I always do this by percent, right? I think it was 104 point, and I don't have the decimal point.
Okay.
But that was we're limited by 5%. So if the rate of inflation is higher,
Yeah.
right, we still can't. So, we went through periods where we had 8% inflation. We can't reach up to there. We are total limitation is 5%. So.
And so just because we're here, so when we had such a high percentage of assessed properties and we got so much more money than we thought, we still base the budget off of a levy. We can't perform the budget within just getting our tax assessments from the properties. There's always a levy. Have we never not had a levy?
Well, the levy is the mechanism to initiate that property tax.
Okay.
So without a levy, so for example, if you just said, we'll approve this budget, but we won't file a levy, right? Then what that means is you'll get next year's levy and you won't fully fund this budget. That's, ultimately, So the levy is what triggers right? So for example, one consequence of that would be you would not do a debt service abatement. So rolled into that levy would be your debt service. So you would actually, by doing that, that debt service has got to get paid some way, and without that action, you'd load up that debt service on taxpayers.
Right.
So you, every year, the levy has to be filed, whatever the levy is, whatever the board is, to initiate with the Will County tax assessor, oh, now we're gonna go out. And they actually adjust it on the back end, because there's some calculations, they have to use new property taxes, some other things, that sometimes they actually adjust it. We're estimating, they're estimating, and real numbers come in for them after the first of the year.
Okay.
But if you don't file a levy, then you stick with last year's levy, right?
Right.
Which you have to figure out a way to pay for that, right? You know, like I said, about most of this pie is already voted on.
Mhm.
You've already agreed to it. Sometimes 2 years ago when you approved a contract, right? So my guess would be if you we're not gonna file a levy this year, you would open up a gap that you've got to fill in. I would not recommend doing that, knowing that you've got things like the work we did last year, the work we're doing right now on Central, the debt service abatement, servicing current debt, and then you're gonna have a facilities master plan on East, right? That's gonna ask you to do things here that need to be done as a natural consequence of the life of things. So I would not advise that you create a gap, if that makes sense.
No, yeah, that makes sense. I'm just,
Yeah.
So if I understand, if we did decide to do that, and I agree, I don't think it's the route that we should do, that would create a compounding effect over time.
It
that we
would.
The district would actually end up losing money over a period of time, because that's money that you can never recapture.
Right,
Because our
'cause-
funds, we only get revenue from taxes.
Right,
We
because the
don't do-
levy is always, the levy that is always set on last year's levy.
Mhm.
So when we say this year that the maximum we can do is, if you say last year's levy was 100% funding its budget, and now we have an increase, and our increase won't match the rate of inflation on these costs, right?
Right.
You know, we can go up to 102.91%, right? That's the 2.91% is the difference. It's the increase, right? You know, so if you forego that increase, right, you will never recapture that.
Right.
That
Okay.
will always be in your levy
Mhm.
going forward, far beyond your tenure, right?
Yep.
Unless someone down the line, you know, has a huge levy to catch up that ground, which I would not recommend as fair to taxpayers.
Right.
Right.
Thanks.
With no further questions, roll call.
yes.
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 Yes. All right. Do you have a motion to approve the transportation shop foreman position?
So moved.
Motion by Candace Garrettson. I'll second that. All right. Any questions? Okay, roll call?
Yes.
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 Yes. Okay, press 118. Do I have a motion to approve press 118, Group 1 policy updates as presented?
So moved.
Motion by Candace Garrettson,
I can second that.
second by Ann Lopez Caneva. Any questions? Roll call.
Yes.
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 Yes. All right, announcements.
You know, you've got them there. A lot going on. You know, Dr. Shaw said some highlights. We put some highlights in there, and of course, I didn't highlight for Kathy Maxwell and I the September board meeting. How exciting! You know, we have to do something big for the September board meeting. That's my 100th board meeting.
Oh.
So, welcome to board meeting number 98 right now. So, don't have a special session between now and then because then they'll throw it off. But 100 board meetings that Kathy Maxwell and I have worked with you on. How exciting, right? Some really fun things. You know, any of those that you're interested in, let me know. We would guide you and get there. And surprisingly, we have two really important things that are not on there. I believe July 22nd is Ann Lopez Caneva's birthday. So happy birthday to Ann Lopez Caneva. We had a little present for you tonight, tomorrow. We're very glad you were born. And July 24th, correct? Dr. Shaw, happy birthday to you, Dr. Shaw. You know, we also have one of our administrators, Jeanette Castillo, is on Friday. What an august week of birthdays. So happy birthday to both of you. We are very glad you were born.
Thank you.
What is poster night?
Yeah, I was gonna ask that too.
Poster night?
Poster night. Yeah, it's a homecoming activity where different
Oh.
clubs and activities. You know, people used to decorate windows downtown. They used to do different displays. It's kind of basically decorating both buildings for homecoming. So fun.
All right. Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting?
I'll make that motion.
All right, motion by Tammy Hayes,
I can second that.
second by Ann Lopez Caneva. All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting ended at 8:46.